Shipwreck on the Arabian coast, by Anonymous. Another hour of struggle. It was past midnight or thereabout, and the storm, instead of abating, blew stronger and stronger. A passenger, one of the three on the beam astern, felt too numb and wearied out to retain his hold by the spar any longer. He left it, and swimming with a desperate effort up to the boat, begged in God's name to be taken in. Some were for granting his request, others for denying. At last 2 sailors, moved with pity, laid hold of his arms where he clung to the boat's side and helped him in. We were now 13 together, and the boat rode lower down in the water and with more danger than ever. It was literally a hand's breadth between life and death. Soon after another, Ibrahim by name and also a passenger, made a similar attempt to gain admittance. To comply would have been sheer madness, but the poor wretch clung to the gunwale and struggled to clamber over till the nearest of the crew, after vainly entreating him to quit hold and return to the beam, saying, "It is your only chance of life, you must keep to it," loosened his grasp by main force and flung him back into the sea, where he disappeared forever. "Has Ibrahim reached you?" called out the captain to the sailor now alone astride of the spar. "Ibrahim is drowned," came the answer across the waves. "Is drowned," all repeated in an undertone, adding, "and we too shall soon be drowned also." In fact, such seemed the only probable end of all our endeavors, for the storm redoubled in violence. The bailing could no longer keep up with the rate at which the waves entered. The boat became waterlogged. The water poured in hissing on every side. She was sinking, and we were yet far out in the open sea. "Plunge for it," a second time shouted the captain. "Plunge who may, I will stay by the boat so long as the boat stays by me," thought I, and kept my place. Yusef, fortunately for him, was lying like a corpse, past fear or motion, but 4 of our party, 1 a sailor and the other 3 passengers, thinking that all hope of the boat was now over, and that nothing remained them but the spar, jumped into the sea. Their loss saved the remainder. The boat lightened and righted for a moment. The pilot and I bailed away desperately. She rose clear once more of the water. Those in her were now 9 in all, 8 men and a boy, the captain's nephew. Meanwhile the sea was running mountains, and during the paroxysm of struggle, while the boat pitched heavily, the cord attached from her stern to the beam snapped asunder. 1 man was on the spar. Yet a minute or so the moonlight showed us the heads of the 5 survivors as they tried to regain the boat. Had they done it, we were all lost. Then a huge wave separated them from us. "May God have mercy on the poor drowning men," exclaimed the captain. Their bodies were washed ashore 3 or 4 days later. We now remained sole survivors, if indeed we were to prove so. Our men rowed hard, and the night wore on. At last the coast came in full view. Before us was a high black rock, jutting out into the foaming sea, whence it rose sheer like the wall of a fortress. At some distance on the left, a peculiar glimmer and a long white line of breakers assured me of the existence of an even and sandy beach. The 3 sailors now at the oars, and the passenger who had taken the place of the 4th, grown reckless by long toil under the momentary expectation of death, and longing to see an end anyhow to this protracted misery, were for pushing the boat on the rocks, because the nearest land, and thus having it all over as soon as possible. This would have been certain destruction. The captain and pilot, well nigh stupefied by what they had undergone, offered no opposition. I saw that a vigorous effort must be made, so I laid hold of them both, shook them to arouse their attention, and bade them take heed to what the rowers were about, adding that it was sheer suicide, and that our only hope of life was to bear up for the sandy creek, which I pointed out to them at a short distance. Thus awakened from their lethargy, they started up and joined with me in expostulating with the sailors. But the men doggedly answered that they could hold out no more, that wherever the land was nearest they would make for it, come what might, and with this they pulled on straight towards the cliff. The captain hastily thrust the rudder into the pilot's hand, and springing on one of the sailors, pushed him from the bench and seized his oar, while I did the same to another on the opposite side, and we now got the boat's head round towards the bay. The refractory sailors, ashamed of their own faint-heartedness, begged pardon, and promised to act henceforth according to our orders. We gave them back their oars, very glad to see a strife so dangerous, especially at such a moment, soon at an end, and the men pulled for left, though full half an hour's rowing yet remained between us and the breakers, and the course which we had to hold was more hazardous than before, because it laid the boat almost parallel with the sweep of the water, but half an hour, yet I thought we should never come opposite the desired spot. At last we neared it, and then a new danger appeared. The first row of breakers, rolling like a cataract, was still far offshore, at least 100 yards, and between it and the beach appeared a white yeast of raging waters, evidently 10 or 12 feet deep, through which, weary as we all were, and benumbed with the night chill and the unceasing splash of the spray over us, I felt it to be very doubtful whether we should have strength to struggle. But there was no avoiding it, and when we drew near the long white line which glittered like a watchfire in the night, I called out to Yusef and the lad, both of whom lay plunged in death-like stupor, to rise and get ready for the hard swim, now inevitable. They stood up, the sailors laid aside their oars, and a moment after the curling wave capsized the boat and sent her down as though she had been struck by a cannon shot, while we remained to fight for our lives in the sea. Confident in my own swimming powers, but doubtful how far those of Yusef might reach, I at once turned to look for him, and seeing him close by me in the water, I caught hold of him, telling him to hold fast on, and I would help him to land. But with much presence of mind, he thrust back my grasp, exclaiming, "Save yourself, I am a good swimmer, never fear for me." The captain and the young sailor laid hold of the boy, the captain's nephew, one on either side, and struck out with him for the shore. It was a desperate effort. Every wave overwhelmed us in its burst, and carried us back in its eddy, while I drank much more salt water than was at all desirable. At last, after some minutes, long as hours, I touched land and scrambled up the sandy beach as though the avenger of blood had been behind me. One by one, the rest came ashore, some stark naked, having cast off or lost their remaining clothes in the whirling eddies, others yet retaining some part of their dress. Every one looked around to see whether his companions arrived, and when all 9 stood together on the beach, all cast themselves prostrate on the sands, to thank heaven for a new lease of life granted after much danger and so many comrades lost.